Hello and welcome to another episode of Diablo D&D. My name is David, and today we're going to be talking about the Barbarian. Before we go over that, I've got to get into the changelog. So from not last week, but the week before, I went over the assassin, and I made a handful of very light changes. The first one is that if you make additional devices past your maximum, the oldest ones are destroyed. This way you can't just keep constantly making grenades and spinny blade things, blade sentinels. The second one is that weapon block now rounds down rather than rounding up. Just make it a little bit more balanced. Alright, let's get on into the Barbarian. So here we are at the base class features, starting with the hit dice, 1d12, unchanged from the D&D Barbarian. Proficiencies in armor, they get all armor and shields. They're a martial class, they don't get rage, and they don't get unarmored defense, so I gave them proficiency in all armors. All simple weapons, martial weapons, pretty simple there. No tool proficiencies, but here's the first change I made. They are a charisma class. The reason being is because they have an entire tree dedicated to war cries. Well, I mean, most of the tree is dedicated to war cries. They are kind of that master of combat manipulation. I've got Howl that can make people afraid of me, or I've got Taunt that make people come attack me. Those are the kinds of things you see here. So having a high charisma could be beneficial. Not always. And I'm willing to say that there could be, there could be some leeway here. It could go Constitution like the D&D Barbarian. But I feel personally that charisma should be a standout change from the original one. That being said, you have subclasses like the Arcane Trickster or the Eldritch Knight that care more about intelligence than your just strength and constitution that the rogue or the fighter care about, or dexterity, I suppose. So it could be just a subclass thing, but I don't know. I'm testing it. I think it's fun, but we'll see. All right, skills. Choose 2 skills from animal handling, athletics, intimidation, nature, perception, and survival. So these are literally the exact same as the D&D Barbarian. I think the only change so far that I've made is just the ability to get heavy armor. Starting equipment, chainmail or scale mail, a martial weapon or 2 simple weapons, a shield or 5 javelins, Dungeoneer's pack or an explorer's pack. Nothing really changed here. It's nothing out of the ordinary, I should say. This covers all of the subclasses that the Barbarian has so far. Speaking of subclasses, level 1, you get a fighting style. This is based around your combat masteries. Now, I can't give you, fighting style polearm mastery or fighting style axe mastery or whatnot, but I've given you dueling, so you can go sword and board. Great weapon fighting, so that you can do your great sword, your polearm, whatever you'd like, or your 2-weapon fighting for that, the frenzy barb, like I said. The one thing I do regret not having, not because I didn't put it in, but because I'm trying to be SRD compatible, is thrown weapon fighting. I would love to get the throw barbarian thrown weapon fighting, but unfortunately it's not part of the SRD, so I'm not adding it in here. All right, continuing on, at level 1 you get Find Potion. You can spend 10 minutes searching for ingredients to make a health potion in your surroundings. Make a DC 20 Wisdom Survival check. On a success, you find enough materials to create a crude potion that heals a number of D4s equal to your proficiency bonus. You can use this ability once per long rest. So you'll notice that these potions do not have a time limit. I've added that into the notes here. Adding a time limit beyond 1 day increases bookkeeping but makes it more balanced. My biggest worry is if it's like, oh, this potion lasts a week or 1d6 days or something like that, then you'd have to keep track of the number of d4s they provide as well as how long you can have one. And that just is a pain to do. I could say that, it just ends, it disappears or goes bad at the end of a long rest or something like that. And that would probably keep it a little bit more balanced. I'd probably drop the DC down a little bit, but I like where it is right now. There's not a ton of healing in this game. I think in this build, I think there is the Paladin's Prayer Aura, which is like 1 hit point every 10 minutes because resourceless healing is a problem. And I think there is also the Paladin's Holy Bolt, which is 1d8 of healing per long rest until a higher level, and I can't remember what it is. I think it's level 10. But there's not a lot to really go on, so I'm okay with just keeping Find Potion where it is for right now. I know it's powerful. I've got an eye on it. I'd like some feedback, but play test it. See if it works, see if it doesn't. One more thing that this does highlight is that the Barbarian is fairly stretched for ability scores. Here you want Wisdom, but since you're a martial class, you also want Strength, and you want Constitution, and you want Dexterity. But there's also that Charisma later on. This is a problem, but Find Potion at the very least can be minimally affected by just gaining proficiency in Survival. You can make a build where you dump everything into Wisdom, you get proficiency with Survival, and then later on you get advantage on Survival with Find Item, and you can build the Healer Barbarian, but not really an optimal build, but hey, I mean, it's an option. I'd actually honestly love to see that. All right, moving on to level 2, you get increased stamina. Barbarians are a hardy people and you are among the best. At level 2, you have advantage on saving throws to resist gaining exhaustion. In addition, you lose a level of exhaustion on a short rest. This can only happen once per long rest. Nothing fancy here. The original one is just you increase your stamina so you can run longer. Whoop-dee-doo. But because we don't really have a stamina bar in D&D, I figured it would be good to say, yeah, you just don't get tired as easily. So forced march and you're fine, or can be fine. This also does tie into, I think it's extreme weathers, like extreme cold and extreme heat. You have to make a saving throw or be affected by exhaustion. I think you get a level of exhaustion. So that does help. This second ability basically says you lose 2 levels of exhaustion per long rest. You just don't go down, and it is wonderful. Level 3, you get a subclass. You get Singer, Throw, or Weapon Master. You'll notice that Frenzy, Whirlwind, and Berserk are not a part of these. I'll explain those when we get to there. 4th level, again at 8th, 12th, 16th, and 19th level, you get a feat. Nothing's changed there from any of the classes. Level 5, they are a martial. They get second attack. Leap at level 7. Leap. It's been giving me some trouble, but let's jump in. No pun intended. Beginning at 7th level, when jumping, you no longer need a running start. Your long jump distance becomes a number of feet equal to your proficiency bonus times 5, and your height jump distance becomes 3 plus twice your proficiency bonus, or the original calculations, whichever is greater. In addition, you can jump further than your movement speed if you have movement left. You don't provoke attacks of opportunity while jumping, and you don't need to make skill checks to clear obstacles or land in difficult terrain. Quick edit to make that while landing in difficult terrain, just some wording. So my biggest issue with this one is I don't really know which calculation to use. The original one says that you can cover a number of feet up to your strength score, and while make standing, it's only half the distance. Standing, easy enough to cut off. It's just say you don't need to run. But jumping up to 20 feet, that's fine. But this is a class ability. I want to see you go flying. So I made it that you have your proficiency bonus times 5. So you don't actually need to have a decent strength score. Heck, you could have a strength score of 4. That's probably a bug, but I mean, this is why I've got maybe strength score times 1.5 or just double your strength score. Doubling your strength score could make it really, really powerful, but I mean, at this point, you've got the Shadow Monk that's teleporting 60 feet in darkness, so I don't think there's anybody who's going to really complain about that. Your high jump distance is originally 3 plus your strength modifier, so it's capping out at like 8 feet, whereas here I have 3 plus twice your proficiency bonus, which is anywhere from 7 to 15 feet. That's pretty darn powerful. The exact calculations I'll be working on for a while, but it's not incredibly important. I don't see it being used a ton in combat. It could be, but by and large, this is more of a I need to get the heck out of dodge rather than I need to get the heck into dodge. Although you can. You certainly can. Now, one problem that I've had is if you have 5 feet of movement, you still get the full length of your jump. And while you're good, you're not that good. So, I'll probably be tweaking this quite a bit. Now, one thing to notice is you don't get the knockback. I kind of want to put the knockback in, but I don't want to make it too powerful. I guess I could make it like, oh, as a bonus action, you can jump this many feet. Like you're spending some time rather than just movement. And that could be something to look at because that would allow you to tack on some utility while cutting down the number of words, because this is a very wordy ability. So I might just make this a bonus action. Or maybe a full action. I'm not sure. I'll keep an eye on it. 9th level. You have advantage on Wisdom Survival and Intelligence Investigation checks. So this is your synergy with Find Potion. So you actually don't need a ton of Wisdom, because if you just pick up Proficiency in Survival and, wait till 9th level, then, you're going to get a pretty good chance that you're actually going to find those potions. Once again, I'd love to see that Healer Barbarian get that free, so many D4s every day of healing. And I think that'd be pretty darn good. I did want to make it closer to the original build or the original ability, but I didn't really know what to do because, not everybody has just gold on them. And it doesn't make sense. It's like, oh, I'm going to tear apart this bug that just attacked us, and suddenly they have, 25 gold. Sure. Works in video games, but, or I guess Robina Hood could be doing something, if anybody remembers her from Adventure Quest. The other thing that I could have done, and I actually did in the original draft of this, was say that you have advantage on these checks to find objects. But the problem was, how do you define an object? Is a bush an object? Are berries objects? Is a person an object? Is a corpse an object? So instead, I just cut all of that out, expanded what this meant, and decided, nice and simple, give you some utility. It minimizes the need for having a decent wisdom. I'm happy with it. Level 11, Iron Skin. Your skin has hardened enough to give you minor protections. While wearing armor, you get a +1 bonus to armor class. While not wearing armor, your armor class is 13 plus your dexterity modifier. You can still gain the benefits of a shield. So this is kind of your draconic scales, dragon scales, I think, feet, or, a lizard folk. This is, if you want to have your skin, your muscles be your armor, go for it. Increased speed. You get an additional 10 feet. Yeah, that's literally it. That's literally just it. I suppose I could say it's like your speed is increased by 5 times your proficiency bonus. But, I mean, then again, you're going to be chasing down level 20 monks when you're, like, what, level 17? It's not a particularly inspiring 13th level feature. It's not really that good. I could give you dash as a bonus action, but nothing really that inspiring. And this kind of makes me sad for something so late. I've been trying to keep this close enough to the level progression of the actual barbarian, or the D&D barbarian, the Diablo Barbarian. And at level 24, it's only 6 levels below the final levels you get, or the final abilities you get at level 30. So I've got to put this somewhere, and level 13 is honestly the only place I felt like where it could go, because Grim Ward and Leap Attack are a little bit... Leap Attack is literally earlier. Huh. Well, I mean, if you want to get increased speed at 17th level, go for it. But, yeah, I think it's the earliest place that I could put it that doesn't make it seem like super, super bad. But give me some feedback, give me some suggestions, see where it takes us. 15th level, you get Grim Ward. At 15th level, you can spend 10 minutes constructing a Grim Ward. Any creature that is hostile towards you or your companions that comes within 60 feet of the ward and can see it makes a Charisma saving throw, DC 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your Charisma bonus, Charisma modifier, or be frightened of you and the ward for 8 hours. On a successful save, they are immune to being frightened of you and any ward you create for 24 hours. The ward lasts 8 hours before being destroyed. This is kind of your quote-unquote Leomund's tiny hut. It's not perfect because they can save, but this offers a level of protection. Now, most of the time in Diablo, you're actually going to be creating it in the middle of combat, and you do have to have the body of a creature, but I'm letting you build it from basically whatever you want to. Not too picky about how it's created, but the intent is simply scare away the people that might want to hurt you. Leap Attack at 17th level. After making a long jump and moving at least 10 feet, you can make a melee attack as a part of it as you land. This is where you leap into combat, where the first thing you do is run and jump and land and start smacking people. The idea of moving at least 10 feet is so that you are not just, I'm going to jump into the square next to where I am currently and make a free melee attack. Now, you can jump over the enemy and land and deal damage, but that's a little bit more like actual movement in combat, not just taking steps around someone. Something I did want to add is the ability to jump high and attack something. Say a dragon is swooping down and unleashing its breath weapon. I want you to be able to jump up as high as you can and get a smack on that dragon's belly as it's flying past. But I don't want it to be just, I jump straight up and then land and get a free attack. It's a note for the future. I might tweak this as I go, or I just might not let people get those free high jump attacks. 18th level, you get natural resistance. Your fortitude against the elements is legendary. You gain resistance to cold, fire, lightning, and poison. This is an 18th level ability. This is your capstone ability. And level 30, you get natural resistance. When you cap this thing out, you're getting 67% additional resistance to every element in Diablo 2. But since you can't do 67% of something like that in Diablo or in D&D, you just get 4, and read it, 4 natural resistances. Yeah, that's pretty darn good. Level 20, you get your epic boon. Moving on to the subclasses. The Singer. This is your charisma class, the arcane trickster of the barbarian. They pick up a saving throw DC, which is Charisma, 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your Charisma modifier. And they get Howl. At third level, as an action, you can have any number of creatures within 30 feet of you that can hear you make a charisma saving throw or be frightened of you for 1 minute. They can make this save again at the end of each of their turns. On a success, the effect ends. Now, the note here, the Berserker Barbarian Intimidating Presence. This is a 10th level feature, not a 3rd level feature, and it is a single target. It is one target, not an AoE. Same DC, and you have to spend your action every turn to extend the duration. So the Berserker, at least the original Berserker, is pretty darn bad. But even this is still a powerful ability, and you're getting it 7 levels after where I'm giving it to you here. I have seen my player use this ability constantly, and it is amazing. So will this be nerfed? Very likely yes. How will it be nerfed? I don't know. I don't want to make it 10 feet because that's just too short. 20 feet doesn't feel right, and I really don't want to put X times per day on it. That's just me, but that may be the only way to actually balance it out. All right, level 3, you also get Commanding Presence. Level 3, you gain proficiency in Intimidation and Persuasion, or another skill if you are already proficient in that skill. Taunt, at 6th level. I wanted to just add Compelled Duel into this ability. Make it easy, but it's not SRD. So instead, as an action, choose one creature within 30 feet to make a Wisdom saving throw. On a fail, on its next turn, it must use its action to make a melee attack against you, using its movement to move by the safest route if necessary. This movement does not provoke opportunity attacks. Creatures with intelligence 3 or lower and creatures immune to being charmed are immune. That last sentence, fairly easy. If they can't understand you, or they're just really good at not paying attention to people, they're going to ignore you. So this is your taunt here. It's just, you come fight me one-on-one. Pull somebody away from someone else. Shout helps your group be a little bit more tanky. As a reaction, when you or a creature you see within 30 feet would be hit by an attack, you add half your proficiency bonus rounded up to their armor class for the triggering attack, potentially causing it to miss. So the original one, Shout, says that you buff the defense of your party. The problem with that is, how do you do something like that? I guess you could say, oh, people within 30 feet of you get +1 armor class if you can just shout. And actually, that's not a bad idea, but using your action to increase the armor class of your allies within 30 feet of you might not be a bad idea, honestly. It does interfere with the fact that you want to use your action to howl, but maybe having competing things does nerf it. It gives you more options, but it does technically nerf the class. I'll keep that in mind. Level 12, Battlecry Battle Orders, not done yet. We are so far away from that right now. I'm just not even going to bother looking at it. I'll do a Let's Build later. 14th level, you get Warcry. This is your only offensive, or at least damaging, ability that the singer gets. It's just a 10-foot radius of Constitution saving throw, or take 48 thunder damage, or half as much on a successful one. So if you're getting people pulled towards you with your taunt, suddenly 48 thunder damage in an area. I mean, at that level, it's not really all that much, but hey, it's something you can do. Battle Command, also not fully completed, so I'll just move on to the Throw Barbarian. So, Double Throw. At 3rd level, you gain the following benefits. You can draw or stow 2 one-handed weapons when you would normally be able to draw or stow 1. Being within 5 feet of a hostile creature doesn't impose disadvantage on your ranged weapon attacks with thrown weapons, and thrown weapons you wield have the light and finesse properties. This ability kind of just takes a few different feats and class features and throws them all together into one. This throwing barbarian is kind of the dual wielder barbarian, except you want to chuck sharp objects down range. So being able to draw or stow two one-handed weapons means that you don't really need to take the dual-wielder feat. Being within 5 feet of a hostile creature doesn't pose disadvantage on your ranged weapon attacks, means you don't need to take crossbow expert. And thrown weapons you wield have the light and finesse properties means you don't need to take the dual-wielder feat. So much like the brawler in the 1D&D playtest, taking just here's a couple of feats or features and putting them together in a single class so that you don't need to take them makes this so much better. Now, there are a few limits on this. You do have to have thrown weapons rather than any ranged weapons. But I think that's a fair trade-off since you're going to be throwing thrown weapons. Now, this one right here, thrown weapons you wield have the light and finesse properties. The reason why I'm giving this to you is because instead of just saying, oh, you can throw weapons that aren't light, why not just give the light property to the weapons so you don't have to worry about it? Finesse gives you so many more options as well, because that means you can focus on dexterity, and you can have a dex barb rather than a strength barb. It's a little bit more, it's a heck of a lot cleaner in terms of the number of words you're using, but it does open up a few more build possibilities. Now, this does mean that you can, if you so wish, chuck a net. You can dual wield nets. But keep in mind, 1D&D is turning the nets from a martial weapon into a tool, I think, or just an object, equipment, something like that. So, yeah, use it while you can. Speaking of using weapons, we have Conjure Weapon. Upon reaching 6th level, you gain the ability to create weapons from thin air. When you attack, you can create spectral weapons which you can use as part of the attack. The weapon must have the thrown property and last until the end of the turn. This is very much similar to the Soul Knife Rogue's Psychic Blades, where they conjure a blade and it has a couple different properties, dealing psychic damage 1d6, so you can create an offhand that deals 1d4. But this is inspired by the Throwing Mastery's passive abilities. It gives you a chance to critically strike, a chance to not consume quantity, and the ability to replenish the quantity on critical strikes. So those of you that aren't familiar with Diablo, thrown weapons have a stack size. So I think throwing weapons have different stack sizes, anywhere from like 120 to 200 something. And once they're gone, you have to repair them. But some of these things cannot be repaired. And you might just go out and chuck 200 things in just a matter of seconds. And then you'd have to go back to town, you'd have to repair, or potentially just get rid of the item because you can't repair it. But Throwing Mastery in Diablo 2 Resurrected, the updated version, the remastered version of Diablo 2, this gives you the ability to, not have to worry about it. I've seen videos on like Ginger Gaming Mentor where he takes the Throwing Barbarian out and he literally, attacking nothing, literally cannot drop his stacks because they're constantly replenishing. That's actually pretty cool. So that's where Conjure Weapon comes from. I think it's actually pretty cool because this also removes the need for carrying around huge stacks of javelins or nets or daggers or whatever have you. Yeah, you got to get to 6th level to do it, but hey, being unarmed walking into a town, you're never unarmed. You're always good to go. Sharp-eyed people among you would notice that the Throwing Mastery also gives you the chance to pierce, and that is your 10th level feature, Piercing Attack. You are capable of throwing weapons with such force as to hit multiple people. When you make a ranged attack with a thrown weapon, not just with the attack action, but even as a reaction, you can instead have each creature of your choice in a line 5 feet wide and up to the maximum range of your weapon. More on that later. Make a dexterity saving throw, DC 8 plus your proficiency plus your with dexterity or strength modifier, or take damage equal to your weapon's damage die plus your dexterity or strength modifier, or half as much on a successful save. Creatures beyond the normal range of your weapon have advantage on the saving throw. You'll notice on the dagger, for example, that this thing has a range of 20 to 60 feet. So within the normal range of, say, 20 feet, you get a normal thing, and then anybody 21 feet up to 60 feet gets advantage on the saving throw. But do notice that the ranges do or can vary depending on which weapon you are using. Now, most of these are just range of 20-60. However, there is one, the javelin, that is much longer. And this is one of the reasons, the javelin is one of the reasons why I wanted to give it the finesse properties, because you can't use your dexterity. The javelin's actually one of the better weapons to use in that manner, because again, 20-60, and some of these are only 1d4, 1d6, I guess, 1d4. So it does kind of make everything, the fact that you have the light and finesse property on everything does basically decide, do I want to do piercing, bludgeoning, or slashing damage? And the net. And the net. But, whatever. Something to think about also is the Yikawa, depending on if your D&D is okay with canon Dungeons & Dragons settings, short range, but it's a 1d8. Anyway, talk to your DM. So the note here is that it is slightly different from the Amazon's Pierce. I can't remember exactly what the Pierce does, but I believe it's when you hit with an attack, it goes up to the weapon's normal range. I think the reason why I'm going to leave this one as it is because bows have a massive range. You got a longbow, and it's got like a short range of 180 feet or something like that. So the piercing attack here, it's fine, I think. But to tie into the piercing attack, 14th level, thrown weapons you wield have their normal and long ranges doubled. So that 20 to 60 becomes 40 to 120. And that actually becomes some pretty darn good range, especially for that javelin. Actually, now that I think about that, why would you ever use anything other than a javelin? Because they all have the light and finesse properties. Oy, 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 oy. And the net. And the net. I'm just going to declare it for right now. Feature, not a bug. Something that I wanted to note was I considered tripling the distance rather than doubling it. 60 to 180 isn't awful. Give me some feedback. Last but not least, we have the Weapon Master. Air horns. Air horns, air horns. All right, so the Weapon Master is pretty darn difficult to do. So because leap and leap attack were a base class feature, and double throw was a subclass feature, and double swing is kind of a subclass feature, literally everything else was taken up. So I was considering breaking Frenzy, Berserk, and Whirlwind into 3 different subclasses, but then I'd have to come up with, a ton more new abilities, and I just didn't want to have to deal with that. So instead, I just put Bash, Stun, and Concentrate as your 3rd, 6th, and 10th level features. And then here's your 14th level features. Capping out is you get to pick one of those. So Bash is when you hit with a melee weapon attack at level 3, you can shove in addition to the damage. That might be a bit too powerful. I mean, getting a free shove, not just an additional 5 feet, but potentially knocking them down. It's very, very similar to the Paladin's Smite. I mean, Smite is way more powerful. I think you get 10 feet. Spoilers, I know. But maybe it's just knocking back rather than a shove. I'll think about it. Not too worried about it. I think it's fine, sort of. But I'll consider it. Stun, I don't have anything. It's not really something I'm terribly concerned with. Probably something like you can perform one massive attack, and if they hit, then you stun as well for 1 round. Stun is an incredibly powerful condition, so I might have to put a limit on it. but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Concentrate is giving me some difficulty. Beginning at 10th level, your melee weapon attacks can't be affected by disadvantage. It is slightly different from Paladin's Concentration Aura and the Amazon's Penetrate, in that the both of these say, oh, if it's affected by disadvantage, you gain advantage, and so it negates it. This one straight up says you don't get affected by disadvantage. And that means you either are normal or you have advantage constantly. There's a big difference, because if you have advantage and disadvantage, they negate each other. But with this one, you can't have disadvantage. So if you would have, quote unquote, disadvantage as well as advantage, you get advantage. So I might have to change this one to be a bit more in line with the way these are worded, because that actually I think is a bit too powerful. So 14th level weapon mastery. Your mastery over weapons takes the form of special attacks. Choose one of the options below. Berserk is ridiculously powerful. You sacrifice all defense for overpowering offense. When you make your first melee weapon attack on your turn, until the beginning of your next turn, you can gain expertise with melee weapons you're proficient with. You get double your proficiency bonus on your weapon attacks. You get a bonus to your melee weapon damage rolls equal to half your level in this class rounded up. And if you miss with a melee weapon attack, your target takes half damage instead, rounded up. You guarantee damage. Does not matter. You get to hit regardless. However, your armor class becomes 0 and cannot increase except from cover. Attacks against you have advantage, and you automatically fail dexterity and intelligence ability checks and saving throws. You can't concentrate or ready actions while berserk. So, walking you through this, you get a ton, and I mean a ton of damage. It's either you hit and basically one hit KO anything you're attacking, or you half KO anything you're attacking. But you are very, very vulnerable. Now, couple questions. Attacks against you have advantage. Why? If your armor class is 0 and can't increase except from cover, it's almost a guaranteed hit. Except natural ones are always a guaranteed miss. But going from a 1 in 20 chance to a 1 in 400 chance, yeah, it still could miss. I've seen it happen, but it is significantly less likely. This last one, I originally had it just dexterity, but I figured you're berserk, you're going nuts, you're throwing caution to the wind. Let's throw in intelligence ability checks and saving throws just so that, it's nerfed a little bit more to keep it in line. The ability to not concentrate isn't too terribly relevant in this build because you don't have concentration spells, but not being able to ready actions, it's kind of this flavor of I'm going to be entirely in the moment. Speaking of which, not being able to take reactions is possibly on the table. This is kind of a way to balance it out so that you get a ton of damage, but you also don't get opportunity attacks. Like I said, it's a bit of a balancing act. It's ridiculously powerful, but it comes with some hefty downsides. So let me know what you think. Let's move on to Frenzy. When you engage in 2-weapon fighting, until the end of your next turn, you make 2 attacks with your offhand weapon instead of 1. You gain advantage on melee weapon attacks, your walking speed is doubled, and your movement doesn't provoke opportunity attacks. So this is the Speedy Gonzalez smack things really, really fast. Instead of damage, this is your accuracy through volume. The thing I don't like about this is that you have to have taken the attack action in order to use your 2-weapon fighting, but I didn't know how to word it. So I just said, hey, 2-weapon fighting, it is until the end of your next turn, granted. So as long as you are smacking people around, and as long as you're able to keep up with somebody, your walking speed is doubled, keep in mind, and your movement doesn't provoke opportunity attacks, which means that you get to get into the back line. you get done fighting that front end tank, and then you turn and you look at the wizard and you charge right through everybody and start smacking the back of line. Very powerful, but too powerful? Let me know. Whirlwind, I actually really enjoy. As an action, you move up to your movement and make a separate melee weapon attack against each creature of your choice within range of your weapon as you move past. You must be wielding a melee weapon in order to use this ability. So something to think about. If the reason why I worded it weirdly, where it says within the range of your weapon with a melee weapon, is that you can throw on a polearm and suddenly you're dancing around the battlefield making a ton of attacks at a 5x5, square. This is the dance of death. Now, granted, you can only attack one person each time, but you can get a ton of attacks, and this fits very, very nicely with that level 13 feature, which you get just before this one, where your movement speed is increased by 10 feet. And might I suggest picking up the mobile feat as well, because then you can move in, smack someone, they can't take opportunity attacks against you, and so you get to move around the battlefield and not be taking hits. It's really nice, and I love this build. But that's pretty much it. That's the Weapon Master, and that is the Barbarian. So, I think everything else is ready for you to take a look. I'll be keeping you abreast of any changes that I'll be making. And so I will say the final words. Have a good whatever.